And we are live. All right, y'all. Always frozen initially. What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. We are back for our kind of breakdown and trailer reaction video for the first official full-length trailer for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune. And with me from Amsterdam, I've got Bill Scurry, who might be actually frozen or really frozen. I can't quite tell because we were having some lag issues. Mr. Scurry, can you? Oh, there he is. I can see you now. But yeah, the reaction. I mean, my reactions are still very emotional, still very fresh. I think Bill and I totally concur that we're a little bit slack-jawed and dumbfounded in all at this point. But I don't want to speak for you. Bill, welcome back to the live stream.
I'm happy to be here. This is the occasion we've all been waiting for. James, this is the only good thing that's happened in the last 6 months. And it's a prelude to the fucking movie coming up. That's all we have.
Yeah, my prediction now, if I'm gonna choose to be an optimist for 30 seconds, is that this movie comes out in December. It grosses $1 billion worldwide somehow, even if theaters aren't open or if people don't want to go, and then it sweeps the Oscars and wins like 12 or 13 Oscars. That's my gut feeling. The reality is, who the hell knows what the future might bring? But from a creative standpoint, I have to say what we just saw was incredibly encouraging.
I really like the fact that, excuse me, I really like the fact that there was so much excitement for it, because I kind of had just assumed that this was going to be a nerd thing between a couple.
Bill has frozen. Holy cow. So I just got a nice donation from Shashank Vichari. Hey, James, your pick for your favorite Villeneuve film. So far, I would have to say, in terms of pure raw pleasure when I first saw it, maybe Sicario, but Blade Runner 2049 would have to be a close second. But Mr. Scurry, you're back. We lost you there just for a quick bit.
I was surprised to see that there's so much co-fan enthusiasm. It looked like this thing was like trending on Twitter. Sometimes I feel like we're the only people who are out here. And then on top of that, the movie fans who like this kind of thing, like, oh, are they fair weather people? They just want to see a big blockbuster thing. But I mean, there's a weird coalition of fans coming on this, partially because of Timothée Chalamet, partially because of Zendaya, partially because of Oscar Isaac. I mean, you can get to this through many different pieces of the production. And even some people have read the book, I guess. I mean, there's some hardcore stands for Dune out there. So, it's one of the things I saw people talking about is that it's cool that there are so many different ways they built this production to get people on board, knowing that it's a tough sell. If they had their work cut out with them with Blade Runner, although that seems weird because Blade Runner is kind of a beloved movie, the 2049 didn't do such a good job coming.
But the Ridley Scott film was not a commercial success, so it's got fans. It's a cult classic, but it's not necessarily Star Wars.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, but. They built this in such a way to get people excited about it, to kind of wash off the Lynch thing. And like anybody knows me, I've been on this channel. And the first live stream of this sort we did, the prototype was about Dune, and I just heaped love upon the 1984 version. It's one of my favorite films. But I recognize the fact that you do have to kind of wash that off a little bit to get people excited about a new thing. Tell them this is a completely new 21st century phenomenon. And I think that they cut this trailer together. They did a really fucking great job on this thing. It was amazing. And that I think they showed all the pieces clearly to let you know what you're going to get coming in. So the actors you want to see.
Jason Momoa kicking ass, you got Jason Momoa kicking ass. If you want to see Timothée Chalamet looking hot, you got Timothée Chalamet looking hot. If you want to see big, epic, sci-fi, like splendor and spectacle, you got that. They're coming out from so many different angles. Or if you're just love smoking weed and listening to Pink Floyd, they got that covered too.
If you're looking for the Charlotte Rampling thing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But I want to just say hello to some folks who've already joined us. Beryl Raider called out Eclipse by Pink Floyd from 1973, Dark Side of the Moon. I already mentioned Shashank Vichari. Thank you so much for the donation. We got Matthias van der Roos, frequent Wrong Reel contributor. Kyle Reardon, once again, frequent Wrong Reel contributor. Tristan Lofting being a bit of a buzzkill. I'm sorry, but this is a love fest for Dune, and if you're not excited, this is going to be the wrong live stream for you. I think the cast is one of the best casts I've ever seen assembled in any era, in any genre. I think the cast is just bone-chillingly good. John Cribbs, once again, from the Pink Smoke, frequent contributor to Wrong Reel. Tell me of thy desire. I can't even speak. I'm tongue-tied with enthusiasm. Tell me of thy desires, and I will tell thee of my need. Duncan the Small, excellent, frequent live stream guest. Paul the Bearded One Downing. Hell yeah. We got so many great familiar faces. Adam Seba,
Yep.
Tyler Silva. I mean, it's just great to see so many familiar faces in here. Let's start diving into some of the details. And I'm thinking basically just kind of going frame by frame through this thing. And it's tricky because you and I both know the book. You and I both know the story. I think a lot of people who are maybe perhaps on the younger end don't know anything. They've seen the trailer, like, hey, this looks cool. It's going to be tough to discuss the details without divulging some spoilers because this is a 50-year-old book or 55-year-old book. But I will try to talk, I guess, tap dance around some of the major revelations, but we might just by sheer accident, just through our knowledge of the story, unveil some stuff. So just fair warning ahead of time, but let's just frame one as this sucker starts. What do you think of Timothée Chalamet? And just now that we've seen him as Paul in action, interacting with the Reverend Mother, interacting with Duncan Idaho, interacting with all these different people, what are your first thoughts on Paul Atreides?
I like this guy. He's the same age that McLaughlin was when they cast him in Dune, which was really interesting, bit of symmetry there. But I liked him when I first saw him in Call Me By Your Name. And
quick test. I'm not hearing Bill, but maybe the lag's on my end. Are y'all can people say in the chat whether or not they're hearing Bill? Because maybe I need to switch over to my mobile Wi-Fi.
I think everybody is hearing me.
Oh, gotcha. So now you're back. Quick question just for the group. Am I the one who's lagging or is you? Because I can switch over to my mobile Wi-Fi if I'm the weak link in the chain.
I'm watching us both. I'm not freezing on YouTube. I think I'm freezing in your videos.
Okay, well, gotcha. Let me switch over to my mobile Wi-Fi, which is very powerful and very reliable. And then we can go from there. Bam, bam, bam. Where is my mobile Wi-Fi? Verizon.
While you're doing that, I will vamp with Paul Atreides. Tell me of your homeworld, Usul. His name is Usul inside Siege Jabar. Outside, he's called Muad'Dib. Muad'Dib is a wise mouse prized by the Fremen for its great wisdom. And Usul means the strength at the base of the pillar. And that is the name that they can call him inside. That's when Paul Muad'Dib is brought into Siege Jabar. Again, none of this is a spoiler. These things are all... these things are all plenty evident by looking at the book and watching the David Lynch movie along the way. But a friend of mine just recently started watching. There we go. You're back.
Oh, Yakasha. Yeah, I've got I'm double logged in right now. So let me kick my other self out and bring you back in. So hopefully now the problem will be solved. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Technology is great until it stops working. But what did I miss while I was gone?
I was vamping and talking about the Usul and Muad'Dib, the difference between the two names. Everybody picked that up. They got me.
Beautiful. Well, I guess, yeah, we were talking about Paul Atreides. I think, man, he's hitting all the great dramatic dimensions that I wanted to hit. I knew he was going to kick ass when I saw him in The King last year when he was playing Henry V. He just had all the qualities that I was looking for in Paul Atreides. And just seeing him in shield practice with Gurney Halek sent chills up my spine. Seeing him screaming with his hand in the box with the Gom Jabar up to his neck sent chills right up my spine. Seeing him getting it on with Zendaya. I mean, this is one of the great sci-fi love stories. I didn't detect a false note. There wasn't a single moment in the trailer I was like, ooh, like they got that wrong. Everything seemed true and organic and just like it all seemed to fit. And while my taste in sci-fi might lean more towards kind of flamboyant, Flash Gordon-y kind of spectacle, it's got an aesthetic and a style of its own. And I think Denis Villeneuve so far appears to have completely crushed it.
Yeah, well, he's inventing his own language, or at least the production designer is, and I couldn't tell you who that is right now. But I mean, the thing that the original Lynch movie in '84 was known for was this incredibly big tapestry shot on these sound stages in Mexico City, where they would make things up to a certain height and fill the rest in with matte paintings. But I mean, like the Jodorowsky version of Dune beforehand, the '84 version also had an amazing sense of set design and the scale, and they were spaceships you hadn't seen before, and it was planets you hadn't seen before. And it's funny, these guys have to do the work all over again. They have to recreate a desert planet. And we've seen a few desert planets now. They got to recreate spaceships. And we've seen spaceships. But I mean, Dune does those things on a tapestry and you know, at the service of a story that doesn't quite follow other sci-fi epics of their kind. You know, I think all those things are really subordinate to the personalities, to the chemistry, to the I want to say politics, but so much the realpolitik of a universe at war with each other. People who really love Game of Thrones. Excellent decision to put Khal Drogo in this thing, because it's like you're going to get the eyes of all the all his fans, but on top of that, I think that's a really good bellwether of what kind of property you're looking at here. Warring houses. You just went through an incredible franchise on HBO where people signed up for exactly that, to see Charles Dance fucking over his bad guys for years and years, his enemies, not his bad guys, for years and years.
Arrakis is the Iron Throne. In Game of Thrones, they're competing for the Iron Throne. Here, the houses, they want Arrakis. And with the Harkonnens, in the book, they talk about how when they were the previous owners of Arrakis, they spend 60 years worth of profits on Arrakis in order to try to get the Atreides family out of there. It's like they drive their entire empire into bankruptcy in order to try to defeat their mortal foe. And I think that's one thing people need to keep in mind, is that no matter how complex and sophisticated this is, in the end, this is a feud. The Atreides and the Harkonnens, they are enemies, and they're trying to completely exterminate the opposing house. And Paul, he's sadly caught in the middle of that, and we see. It's not a spoiler. We see it in the trailer. Duncan Idaho refers to him as my Duke, so we all know where this is going. And obviously, the big blind side of Baron Harkonnen is that he disregards and ignores the Fremen. He thinks they're an afterthought. And Paul and Duncan and Liet Kynes and all these other characters, they recognize that the Fremen potentially are, through desert power, the most powerful force on the planet.
Yeah, that's the term is desert power. It's an actual line from the book. He says, what is like the Imperium might have air power or space power, but we have desert power. And to be honest, on Arrakis, nothing else matters. You have a planet full of scorching hot deserts and sandstorms and waterless environments, and it's like all that matters is people who can live inside of it and then thrive and win and destroy their enemies. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to get to that in the second book, if they get to it at all. The fact that the Fremen are this fighting force, non-pariah, that can do their best against any foe. But actually, one of the things I wanted to ask
Arrakis is the perfect training ground. Like I mentioned, Sardakar fanboy in my little tag. The Sardakar,
yes,
they've trained on a planet that's really brutal. But what people don't realize is that the Fremen are going through their own Sardakar training just through their natural habitat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of the Sardakar. Presumably, what we're seeing is, even though in the book, supposedly it's the Sardakar fighting with Harkonnen livery, because it's essentially an army slipped in the jackets and the guise of another to conceal the origin. I'm assuming that what we are looking at are the Sardakar Warriors, which had a very distinct look, and they were essentially stitched together body bags in the 1984 Dune. But I've always wondered, the Sardakar in the books are talked about so legendarily. It's like, well, should they look human? Should they look like armored warriors? Should they just look like Navy SEALs? Like, what should they look like? So what did you think of that appearance?
I didn't, until we get a really good close look of a battle. Like I remember one point where Thufir Hawat is negotiating with the Fremen, basically trying to form like a temporary alliance, and then they suddenly get ambushed by Harkonnens and Sardakar. But I didn't get enough of a good look yet to know whether or not they've nailed it or not. But just real quick, because since you and I have been talking for a while at this point, so I acknowledge a few folks in the chat. Thanks for everybody for cooperating with my technical difficulties. I really appreciate it, and I love this. Someone said like he bumped himself. Yes, I'm more than happy to bump myself from my own show in a crisis, because the show must always go on. Ego Boater says, haha, Bill knows his Herbert. Yeah, for people who have not read the book, I think a lot of times people are intimidated by the jargon, but even once you get over the hump of the jargon, if you just have like a glossary to the side, this is an incredibly accessible book. It was a massive global bestseller. It's not like you're sitting down to read Dostoevsky or, it's commercial entertainment. It just has its own language. But once you get accustomed to the language, it just flows over you, because it has so many just like clearly defined characters, so much emotion, and just so many characters you're going to completely, totally fall in love with. The FC Schaefer says a family feud, great convoluted fantasy epics are built on simple story foundations. 100% agree. And he admitted earlier on Twitter he's not read the book. So Fred, I know you're a writer. It is your homework between now and December to read the book. Ego Boater says, which of them is a box office draw? Not talking about acting talent. That is the big $1 million question, because Denis Villeneuve, while people love him, he hasn't necessarily had any runaway box office successes. And I think what we're looking for here is like a mesh of different little fandoms, as Bill was mentioning earlier. Josh Brolin's got fans. I mean, Thanos himself. Dave Bautista's got fans. You got Drax, Oscar Isaac, Apocalypse himself, and also from Star Wars. But Stellan Skarsgård brings in the European audience. Javier Bardem, same holds true there. Charlotte Rampling. I think you're bringing in a bunch of different little fans or different fan groups, or Zendaya with the pop music, or Rebecca Ferguson through like Mission Impossible and
Rose the Hat, right?
Yeah, and Dr. Sleep. And I think it's just going to create this kind of alliance of different fandoms all coming together. Like, what the hell is this concept Dune? And there's just a bunch of different doorways where people can step into the story. And the big doorway has not been revealed yet. Maybe it won't be revealed until the sequel. Who is going to play Fade Routha, Paul's his nemesis or his counterpart in the Harkonnens?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that you get two big pieces of casting left. And look, I mean, one of the things me and James were talking about before the mics went hot was, where will this movie stop? Because this is a part 1 of 2. If that wasn't immediately explicated, Dune is written in 3 books, 3 essentially large chapters of a book. But we understand that you couldn't possibly fit in, if you wanted to do it correctly the way Villeneuve wants to, you need to do it into 2 movies. It's going to get the It treatment. Hopefully, they actually stick the landing on that. We do get the It treatment. So, yeah, there's 2 pieces of casting that are pretty important in the book. They haven't announced. One is Fade Routha, and one is Emperor Shaddam Carino. So, it's a smaller part, but it's a very important role. Emperor Carino. Essential. But Fade Routha is a big deal. That he was Sting in the 1984 original movie. He was played by Chris, what's his face, in the sci-fi series that came out around 2000. The guy from Chris Eigeman, I think was his name. And he's a counterpart. He's the twisted funhouse mirror version. What essentially, if you grew Paul Atreides in a lab, but removed from his scruples, morals, values, empathy, compassion, you'd be left with the photo negative inverse, and that's Fade.
You're basically left with a gladiator champion who wins like 1,000 battles in single combat. So while Paul's having all these formative experiences with and I love how Paul has a variety of mentors, whether it's Duncan or Thufir or Gurney or whomever, or just his father, Duke Leto Atreides. It seems like with Fade, you got one influence. You got Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, the best name for any villain in any sort of fictional setting, in any form of media. And the little glimpses we got of Baron Harkonnen saying, just kill them. Or when he's rising out of that mud bath. Holy shit, I think Stellan Skarsgård is all over this character.
After Gary Oldman got the fat treatment in the Churchill movie, I mean, any disbelief I might have had about making a regular-sized person into an obese bag of shit, like no offense to people, I'm saying in terms of a grotesque is what I mean. Sorry, but
Jabba.
Jabba, right. He looks the way people have been doing concept art of this guy for decades. I mean, Skarsgård, not worried about the acting from underneath all the latex, because that's going to be insane. But the actual look of it is crazy. That is precisely, Ken McMillan is one of my favorite actors. And it's like, I will never lose my affection for how great, he might have been the single best thing about the 1984 Dune. Watch my video on YouTube I did about Ken McMillan's career. That's the capstone I used for the whole thing. But I think Skarsgård has the chance to uproot that and create a new villain, just because that's been so formative for me. Yeah, they did these. They give you the slightest hint. One is in a steam room where you just see this foggy image of him, and the other is him arising from an oil bath. And you just wonder, it's like, well, how depraved is this guy going to be? They showed you Dave Bautista as Beast Glossu Raban. That's my name here. And, the nephew. And you're wondering, it's like, well, what are these guys going to be like when they're in the same room together? It's going to be fucking lit.
I mean, I'm all about the villains in any sort of, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, whatever, bring on the villains. I'm always a fan of the villains. But Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is one of my all-time favorite villains. And what I love is how in the book, when Paul's looking into the future, he can see at times options for futures, and he knows there's one possible path. I'm going to press pause because I was about to give away a massive spoiler for people who have not read the book.
Don't do that.
Let's just say that. Well, I'm a bit. Stop. I'm going to abort. I'm going back to comments. All right. So let's see. John Cliff says, with this new movie, I'm going to practice Spannungsbogen. I don't know what that is, but it sounds delightful.
That's one of the words from the Imperium, but I can't remember because the glossary is old in my head.
Moose Matson is in the house. Moose Matson is actually the screenwriter and star of my next short film, The Hobo with the High Kick, which we're actually going into production on next Saturday here in New York with the great Bill Tech directing. And we've recruited Marcus Penn and Rob Cotto to make cameos, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But basically a lot of high kicks, a lot of martial arts. And we've even hired a stunt coordinator who's appeared on a bunch of fun shows and movies to basically take over martial arts studio for the day. In any event, if you like martial arts and you like this channel, stay tuned for The Hobo with the High Kick starring Moose Matson. Grevlane with worms all around standing still. Paul drinking the water of life would be an epic endpoint.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I could agree with that.
Yeah, that would be a great exit. I think the exit, whether it's Paul's ascension or whether it's just Paul officially joining and becoming a part of the Stilgar's tribe, because as people know, there is a very famous duel that Paul has to fight in order to really establish his place in the tribe, where he finally, he and Chani finally fall in love, and he really just joins this tribe. I think that's our exit point, a combination of those two. I'm also, when it comes to Fade and the Emperor, I have a feeling that if and when they get to make the second movie, we're going to get an intro which shows a parallel journey. We've seen the journey of Paul up to this point in the first movie, and while all that was going on, it's almost going to be like a 10-minute intro, but this is Fade, and this is the training he's been going through, and this is the mentat he's been educated by, and these are the fights that he's having. And so suddenly when you go back to Paul, you're like, oh shit, this is killer, being groomed to take his spot. What the hell is going to happen? And it would almost be like one of those, like when the Two Towers came out, you have that little like short film at the beginning with Gandalf fighting the Balrog. That for me is how they should handle the introduction of Fade.
Yeah, we've gotten used to that already. We've been primed to expect that kind of thing. Also, that's a good warmer upper to get you into the second part of this movie, which I assume would be 2 or 3 years in between chapters. I mean, they're not going to get to shooting the second part of this until they figure out how the first one actually does at the box office, even though Villeneuve says that they almost like swore to him that he will get to make the second part of this. And that's a big gamble just because nobody knows how the box office is going to pan out. And this is a very expensive movie.
Hollywood is going through the biggest transition year that it's been through probably since the transition from silence to sound, because we're going from the transition from the theater to streaming or some sort of strange hybrid. No one can say with any certainty what the future will bring. If Warner Brothers is smart, if I were them, I would say put this fucker online for like a $50 premium price tag. Let people throw Dune parties, but let the entire world see it all at once. Who knows what the theater situation will be like by December? I'm hoping we'll be back to smooth sailing. We might not be. And the movie industry is in the process of reinventing itself. So I feel like all bets are off on promises for future productions if Warner Brothers doesn't figure out how to make HBO Max more of a player.
Yeah, Key Lime brought up something great. Key Lime says Greig Fraser's work on as DP on this will be his career best, and yeah, I think that he's ready to step up to like Hoyt Van Hoytema levels. The idea of doing Roger Deakins type work, and this movie presents just from the scenic vistas they have, and I assume a lot of that is photography. That's second unit stuff they got.
I think they shot in Jordan. Didn't they shoot in Jordan?
Yeah, they were out on Wadi Rum out in Jordan, which is, I mean, they've shot a shitload of movies there, but it's a pristine desert that goes on for miles. There's no rocks. And they all the soundstage stuff was done in Budapest, and all the desert stuff was shot in Jordan. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, virtual cinematography, but the thing is you have a shitload of actual desert out there. I mean, and, sunlight and, sand diffused air and all the, this wonderful stuff. And I think that it is going to be a beautiful film on top of everything else. James, the only complaint I've had is that some of the fans online were saying that they really like the Pink Floyd thing. And I get it. That's what we do with trailers these days, is the sort of symphonic orchestral irony.
Worked for Suicide Squad. That first trailer was all Pink Floyd.
Yeah. And it's like, I love Dark Side of the Moon. I just, there's going to be a Hans Zimmer score on this. And I guess it wasn't ready to cook yet. So but they also, it's not just that, they used the trailer language that we've had where we have something slowed down or maybe put in a minor chord or something, given that deep symphonic, irony. And it's almost like when I was listening to when Sabotage came on in the Star Trek movie. It's like I want to keep this thing over here. I want to keep this thing over here.
Yeah, let's not besmirch this conversation with conversation about Sabotage and Star Trek. But Nathan Shell brings up an interesting counterpoint. He says, "I can't believe they got Pink Floyd for the soundtrack. That's an incredible homage to the Jodorowsky version, in which he intended Pink Floyd to write the soundtrack. Yeah, they were going to contribute a few songs as well as I can't remember the other. There's another group that was going to contribute some songs as well. But I remember there's a great scene where Jodorowsky meets Pink Floyd and they're all eating McDonald's cheeseburgers and he's furious and nearly storms out of the room. But I didn't even think of that at the time. It is a cool nod to Jodorowsky's original vision that Pink Floyd would be in harmony. And also the book came out in 1965. Pink Floyd in the book, I mean, they were part of the same pop culture
Yeah.
tapestry. But yeah, good call, Nathan. All right, Cowrie, if I'm saying that correctly, only let down with the fact that there was no date at the end of the trailer, strong indicator for a pushback release. That is the rumor I'm hearing as well. The rumor I'm hearing is that the numbers for Tenet have been soft.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman 1984 will take Dune's date, and Dune will get pushed into 2021. 2021 is already so crowded because of all the other push movies. There's going to be precious little land for any movie to stand on. But if that's what they do, then that's what they do. We can't control that. It'll break my heart because I need something to look forward to around Christmas time. But I think you're absolutely on the mark. Fred Schaefer says, I have great affection for Frank Herbert. Back in the day, I heard him on a radio interview. It was the first time I heard an author talk about the writing process and was truly inspired. Yeah, he was a powerhouse. I've only read the first 4 books in the series. My favorite is the first by a country mile. Some people say the 4th. Maybe it's just because it's so different, so unusual.
God Emperor is where it sticks the landing, yeah.
Yeah, but number 1 for me is one of the great works of the human imagination in any era. I place it up there with Homer and the Odyssey. I place it up there with Shakespeare and King Lear. I mean, for me, Frank Herbert's Dune is as good as it gets when it comes to the human imagination. Zach Wilson says, I'm intrigued. I am intrigued as well, Zach. So I can't even speak, Zach Wilson. All right, so I'm going to just go a few frames more along the trailer. What do you think about the blue eyes on Zendaya and a few of the other actors?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll play those up a little more. It's not going to be that weird floating optical effect that they added. If anybody who doesn't know this, the Dune is based on this substance called the spice melange. And the whole point of this desert planet is to harvest this spice. And the spice is very rare, and it's very, it has a geriatric effect on the human body.
Consciousness expanding.
Consciousness expanding. But one of the things it does to the human body is it makes the eyes blue and blue. Literally, it takes the white, the sclera of your eyes and the pupils, turns them all sort of an electric blue. So you have to represent that somehow. And it looks like they're doing it in a minor digital effect. I wonder if they'll mix that a little higher or light it or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we have enough time between the trailer and then when the movie comes out to see how they want to fix people's pupils. But yeah, that's the sign. If you've been on Arrakis for a long time, your eyes turn over, and that's how you know that you have good water discipline and that you're of the sand, as Stilgar likes to say.
Well, interesting comment from Paul Atreides himself. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Usul. Welcome, Paul. Dude, he said they changed jihad to crusade. Should have left it as Herbert intended. My hope is that in the context of the story, they will still mention the Butlerian jihad, because obviously that's where men decided that no longer would they build any technology that basically performs the function of a person's mind, which is what leads to the Mentats, these supercomputers like Thufir Hawat. If they don't use the word jihad in the context of the movie, that'll be a cop-out. I completely agree. Adapt the book or don't adapt the book, but don't change the book. And so, yeah, that's an important word, because it is a friggin' jihad. That is one of the possible outcomes, that if Paul achieves this Messiah-like level, that his followers might spread around the universe, committing complete and total genocide in his name, and it's an outcome he wishes to avoid.
Yeah, well, the first movie, and actually either of the two, the sci-fi series from 2000 or the 84 version, kind of didn't talk about that at all. The movie was its own little voyage from an arc from point A to point B. I mean, there was a sequel. They did the Children of Dune miniseries afterwards, but those were all self-contained. They didn't throw to the future the idea that, Paul, from the very first few pages of Dune, is talking about this prophecy he feels, this vision that's out there. I get the impression that Villeneuve is making this whole movie about maybe the inevitability or the fatalism of all the things that are happening. He's being pushed towards as you see the images of those spacecraft, fire coming out of the desert and some great upheaval.
And the danger of replacing one form of tyranny with another. That's what's so cool about this, is when you're talking about politics, and I avoid politics like the plague on my channel, but this book handles politics brilliantly, like in the best possible way. And no matter what your intentions might be, there is the possibility that in seeking to defeat Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, you become just as bad as he is.
Yeah, I mean, no one, it's not like the things that he's a really unlikable character, and they're going to take great pains to make him this disgusting, grotesque of a man. He's a pedophile, which they kind of rushed on a little bit, but I think they're going to underline that stuff and, make him as disgusting as possible. So he's, if Paul is shown as having the potential to become a bad guy, I think he's going to become a bad guy on his own. His counterpart, Fade, would really pick up the suspensor belt of his corpulent uncle, I think Paul would become a different kind of fiend, a different kind of satanic maniac, or as he says, they shall call me Shaitan, the devil.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's keep pushing through the trailer. What do you think of Charlotte Rampling? I had a brain freeze while watching it. I knew of Charlotte Rampling ahead of the time, and she was doing such a good job. But for whatever reason, she was looking like Isabelle Huppert, which was like my own fantasy dream casting. In any event, we get the great Dom Jabar scene, which is the opening of the novel. The novel opens up Paul being awakened by his mother, being warned that this meeting is very important. And this is a scene to decide, is he an animal or is he a human? Will he chew off his own foot to try and save his life, or can he withstand the pain?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's that dialogue, at least as it was cut for the trailer, none of that appears in the book. And I assume that they weren't going to just recapitulate dialogue from the book, as David Lynch himself did in '84. Another one of the reasons I like it a lot, because it was transliteration in many ways. But yeah, Charlotte Rampling looks great in that role. And it reminded me that Charlotte Rampling kind of hasn't been in the game the way her other counterparts are. The people who share that same echelon of like grand dame of film, you know, she was doing incredible. When was the last time I saw Charlotte Rampling in some really, really devious, wicked role? Was like The Verdict, you know, with Paul Newman, going back to like 80 or 81.
Well, she's in like Swimming Pool, but she's been active. Yes. I mean, she's one of the hottest girls of the late 60s, early 70s. She even appeared as an extra in Hard Day's Night. But she's born in 1946, still happy to get naked in movies, and she's still very game. So she's got a lot of productions that she's worked on. She was in Red Sparrow as the trainer of Jennifer Lawrence's character. So she was in Assassin's Creed. So she pops up in some mainstream stuff. So I think some people will recognize her from those.
Yeah, but she doesn't occupy the same space in the consciousness the way that Isabelle Huppert does, or Judi Dench, or Helen Mirren.
She's not Javier Bardem. Yeah, Javier Bardem is like a force of nature.
Yeah, but I mean, I think she should be punching that weight. But I just don't think that there's like a lack of casting imagination. Right, anyway, long story short, yeah,
she was one of the best parts of Melancholia, the Lars von Trier film.
Gaius Helen Mohiam, who I assume is going to have a bigger role in this than just what we saw in that. I mean, I think she's perfectly cast for it. I mean, I think that's exactly the kind of icy English distance that you need for this part. And I think that, that scene is going to be electric between the two of them. It's going to be fucking fabulous.
The pain! All right, well, a few comments from the crowd. Maxim Petrov says, and the Fremen are technically a people of junkies. Yeah, I mean, it's a harsh word, but it's true. This whole planet is a planet of junkies. The spices and everything. It's in the food you drink. It's in the water. I mean, it's the food you eat, the water you drink. Everything's got the spice. And when Paul gets there, what he doesn't realize that the spice immediately starts having an impact on him. And because he's been getting groomed as a swordsman and as a basically a living human computer, as well as Bene Gesserit training through his mother, his mind is perfectly conditioned and prepared for this infusion of spice. It's going to explode his mind even more. And that's what's so great, is that this whole first book is just a metamorphosis of Paul into a higher level of being. Now, what did it say? They all want the Old Spice. Yeah, I used to use Old Spice. Now I use Degree. Let's see. All right, so I'm seeing Funky Sal says 4 was too weird for me to enjoy. 4. I wonder if
God Emperor.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it's a very different kind of story, and it goes to another level in terms of sci-fi weirdness, in terms of the central protagonist / antagonist. But yeah, I recommend it. But I think the first one's a clear-cut masterpiece, whereas the rest is just a really good sci-fi series. But I still haven't read books 5 and 6 by Herbert. So I owe it to myself as a fan to finish the journey. Keyline Productions says Meg Foster would have been a hell of a Gaius Helen Mohiam. Agreed. Meg Foster would have been really good. She's a marvelous actress.
No argument. Absolutely.
A comment from Troy White. Miss Rampling was nominated for an Oscar in 2015, wasn't she? I don't know. She might have been. I mean, I love her going back to things like Zardoz and, or the Night Porter. I mean, in the 70s, she was game for anything, or like films like Stardust Memories with Woody Allen. She's been all over the place, worked with everybody. And she's always been game. Was awesome. Verdict, she's incredible, but she's always been game for incredibly aggressive, edgy, almost transgressive material. She's just a total, complete powerhouse. But getting back to the trailer, I'm just going to go forward a few frames. The box looks incredible. The Dom Jabar looks incredible. I love the look of the ships, but let's talk a little bit about my favorite character, Gurney Halek, played by Josh Brolin, in SHIELD practice with Paul, throwing down. As we mentioned before, desert power is a big deal on Arrakis because you can't really use your shields because the shields will summon a worm through the vibrations. But how would you compare Josh Brolin so far to Patrick Stewart's and moods are for Catalan love play, not fighting?
Brolin's got big dad energy. Like he's a tall guy. He's bigger than Patrick
Serious
Stewart.
guns.
Serious guns. The guy's jacked up. He's got a deep voice. The thing about Gurney Halek is that Gurney Halek is supposed to be a rougher man in the book than Patrick Stewart played him as. I did not mind Patrick Stewart's portrayal at all. It was something he created, and he came there. He's a very eloquent gentleman warrior, and Gurney Halek is not those things. Gurney Halek is like a dock fighter. He got his ass kicked in the slave pits of Gidi Prime. He was literally whipped impersonally by Glossu Raban with an ink vine. We didn't actually see this. He's supposed to have this colored scar.
Big scar, yeah. But he hates the Harkonnens more than anyone.
More than anybody, yeah. But he looks great. I mean, and that's, you said, one of the things that this trailer did really well was to begin to build all of these father-son relationships that are in the book. The paternal thing that he has with Duncan Idaho, his sword master. The thing he has with the strategy master, Gurney Halleck. We actually didn't get to see a lot of Oscar Isaac. I know he's got a smaller part in this than other people for other obvious reasons, but those are the characters that you think we're going to see a lot of, and so they really built up how important they are and the chemistry that little teeny Timothy Chalamet is going to have with these two gigantic hulking men.
Yeah, I mean, he's rocking out with Thanos himself. And yeah, I just love the fact that in the interview they showed before the trailer went live, there's a Twitter interview between Stephen Colbert and all the cast, and Josh Brolin said he's the only person alive who actually knows how to play the battle set. He's been playing it his entire life, so he's the only person they get cast in the part, because that's the thing. In the book, there's always an opportunity for Gurney to quote a song or play a little bit of his battle set, because he is one of the universe's most cunning, ruthless warriors, but he's got the soul of a poet, and I love that soft side. And I'm getting chills even talking about it, but that scene in the original 1984 Dune where he's like, you young pup. I mean, it makes tears stream down my face every time.
Beautiful.
Patrick Stewart nailed it, but I'm rooting hard for Josh Brolin. So comment from John Cribbs: I love God Emperor, but it's a bit of a slog. Heretics in Chapter House was the start of a new trilogy that Herbert didn't finish before his death. Yeah, his son picked up the baton and ran with it and wrote many more books. I don't know if I'm ever going to dig into the books by his son, but I will gladly finish all the books written by the master himself. Snixel Mix Nixus, the Thopters look great. 100% agreed. That's the Thopters. They're like flying insects. And that's one thing Jodorowsky was getting to in his interpretation that Lynch kind of neglected. And I love that the fact that the Thopters are like flying mosquitoes. And yeah, that looked so damn cool.
Yeah.
And we've got, all right, Benjamin Hinn says, Brolin looks like he's having the time of his life every second in the trailer. Agreed. I mean, he was doing live streams from the set, pictures on the desert. He was just so excited. It seemed like every day was the world's greatest adventure. And I think he's going to, I don't think he's going to surprise us because we're all Josh Brolin fans. I mean, he was in fucking Infinity War and Endgame, for God's sake. He's got plenty of fans. But it looks like it's a great dramatic turn for him. Paul Atreides says, my favorite is Dune Messiah, the darkness and the destruction of the hero into a tyrant, Michael Corleone of sci-fi. I love Dune Messiah, but I guess as someone who fell in love with the character of Paul Atreides in the first book, he reaches such a peak. There's really nowhere else for the character to go. So naturally the character has to then go down. But of course I'm thinking, no, let him become Galactus. Let him become, just keep getting bigger, bigger, bigger. That did not happen. And so it does hurt me a little bit that new characters start to emerge who start to take center stage. But it is a damn good read, without a doubt. More comments. Actually, I'm going to do a few more. I'm going to scan ahead on the trailer. What do you think of the overall look of Caladan? Because we do get some shots of Caladan, the Lady Jessica. I was hoping for some more of the Lady Jessica, because we don't know in the book, the Lady Jessica, she's probably, in the first half at least, the biggest POV character in the book. Paul is obviously the focus, but a lot of those scenes are from Lady Jessica's point of view as she's analyzing and kind of just trying to understand what's going on with her son. And Rebecca Ferguson has been doing such a great job lately. I loved her as Rosa. I thought she was the best part of Dr. Sleep. But what were your thoughts and reactions to the brief shots we got of Caladan, the homeworld?
Yeah, Caladan, or as I like to call it, Planet Norway, because, it is, as it's described, it is like a watery planet, just filled with fjords and mountains, and it's wet and damp, and there's rarely sunny days and things like that. Hence the contrast with giving up Caladan and taking over this desert planet with the idea that you will, yield and harvest this a natural resource that is beyond value. That's the only reason why you would give up this beautiful planet. But I think it's the most idealized version of Norway that you can possibly find. I mean, the photography made it look great. And I have to assume that, I don't know, if we're going to get a 2-hour movie out of this, maybe only a half hour, 25 minutes is going to take place there. So it's going to go by pretty quickly. But I think what happens is that Caladan delivers its people onto Arrakis. So as in the book, Jessica is so she's so heartsick at leaving this place because it was her home. It's where the last bit of good news they had between her.
It's a beautiful planet. It's a wet planet, and Arrakis is a cruel planet and a desert planet.
Harsh and dry. Yeah, absolutely pitiless. But Rebecca Ferguson she's incredible. She can handle anything right now. It seems that she dips between drama, she dips between costume drama, she dips between sci-fi, genre stuff. I mean, that's great. It's like, I think of her and Andrea Riseborough and what's her name? Florence Pugh. And Elizabeth Moss among those they're
keeping their foot in either world.
Really they're incredible. Just doing really good work right now.
All right, well, here's a comment from Ramsey Hassan, one of our oldest friends from Twitter, who's got their own podcast, but she says, Jason Momoa is so happy. His character is in for the long haul. The closest Dune gets to having a C-3PO, R2-D2. Agreed. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but if you like Duncan Idaho, read all the books because he is a recurring character.
That's true. I forget about that. You're right.
Yeah. All right. Zach Wilson says, James, I love how emotional you get. I'm the same. I can't describe a plot I'm excited about with getting caught up in the emotion. Yeah. Empaths unite. Yeah. This is one of those situations where it was the most powerful emotional response I've had to a trailer all year. I couldn't even talk while I was trying to do my reaction video. Yeah. My tongue was just spazzing out in my mouth, and I was just a mess. And it's just so encouraging whether you love a great video game series, a great comic book character, a great series of books, when you see somebody really taking it seriously and trying to do their best and really just giving us something special. And it doesn't happen often. And so it's just a rare moment in pop culture where I just felt total euphoria. Oh, Robert O'Mara from Ireland. Greetings, guys. Late to the party as usual. What I miss?
Bob O'Mara. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, we had a man boobs contest, but you'll have to go back and watch the earlier part of the video to decide who's got the more impressive rack attack. Cowrie says, what do you think about the lack of Fremention in the trailer? I mean, you see Stilgar, but I think, and you obviously see Chani, and those are the two big ones. Mm-hmm. So I think they're basically just trying to imply the Fremen without giving us the full brunt of the desert power. But I think there's a great shot early on when they mention, in the context of the trailer, Crusade, what we all know is a jihad. You see Chani and Paul side by side looking out of her field, and there's flames in the distance. That could be Arrakeen and on fire, or that could be the result of a battle with the Fremen. We don't really know the context of that scene yet. So maybe that is the Fremen at war. We're just going to have to wait and see. But I'm going
to. Scone and Blades makes a great point. I was going to bring this up too. The one guy we did not see is David Desmalchian as Piter de Vries, who has a small but very crucial.
Well, I know you
role.
love.
I do.
Yeah,
I do love that character. As everybody knows,
for people who don't know the book, explain what a Mentat is and explain how Piter differs from Thufir or Thufir.
Too. Oh yes. So I because I'm in Netherlands, I'll tell you this. Whether it's obvious to other people or not, when Frank Herbert was naming the Mentats, he gave them all Dutch names. Those are all. It's almost like the idea of the Chom Corporation, which this movie will mention. That's the commercial mercantile license to harvest. That's very much a Dutch East India Company, and the Mentats themselves between Piter and Toofer. Those are old Dutch names. So that's not an accident. But the Mentats are human computers, like James had alluded to. It's artificial intelligence. They actually added a commandment to the Bible to outlaw artificial intelligence. That was off the page type stuff that happened centuries and thousands of years beforehand. So they've had to refine the human mind to pick up the slack. And so the spice helps people with training and with a lot of ingestion of the spice. It turns their brain they use their entire brain, and it turns it into the kind of machine that could actually plot a course through stars. The David Lynch movie had this idea that they folded space, and that doesn't exist. It's the idea that the the Mentats were able to plot a course through stars by intense computation, so that you could just essentially have this thing called a Holtzman engine that would send you across the universe in one shot by missing all the stars. And that's what you need the Mentats essentially to do, is they're astrophysicists pretty much.
Yeah, but with Piter, he's that, but he's also an assassin. And that's what's
Yes.
interesting, is that you have these people that are performing these incredibly vital roles, but they're also trained killers. So it's like, oh, like it's scary enough that this person likes to kill people. They're also a super genius to boot. And so I just love the disciplines. If this were a video game, it's just like, what build do you want to have for your character? What class do you want to build? And Bene Gesserit is one set of skills, and Swordsman's another, and Mentat's another. And it's like, these are all classes within this. It's like D&D before there was D&D. And as somebody who played 20 years worth of D&D, that stuff just gives me a nerd boner with a capital O.
Yeah, and like you're alluding to, is that there are two of these guys in the book, and one of them works for the light forces, one of them works for the dark forces, and the differences in disposition. Two for Howitt, who's played by Stephen Hendricks. I forget the guy's name. I haven't seen him in too many movies.
Yeah, he was in the show Devs. He was incredible in Devs, and he plays a total computer nerd in it. And so I think he's ready, and he's ready to rock in this character.
And he worked with Chalamet in Lady Bird, so I mean they do have some experience of being together before. But he's the master of assassins for House Atreides, which means it's his job to maintain house security and strategy. And Piter de Vries is a completely amoral, immoral, venal mentat who's a disgusting slime creature whose only job is to be venal and vicious and vile and to get over on people in the service of a horrible, horrible, inhuman grotesque. So every horrible thing you can possibly imagine, a person doing in order to excel in a sort of royal house system, like a feudal system, which is what Dune has. House Harkonnen will ascend not through noble means, but by everything unimaginable and ghastly.
Wow, I'm seeing a giant pile of comments that we should start ripping our way through. So I might not be able to get to all of them, but I'm loving the enthusiasm. This actually, in terms of total people watching at one time, is my biggest live stream I've ever had. So that is awesome. So let's start ripping through some of these. Boom, boom, boom. Cody Hughes says, Denis is one of the best directors to helm this masterpiece. Here's hoping for a part 2 to be greenlit. I think when it comes to sensibility, style, aesthetics, technique, experience, I agree. There's no one on the planet that I'd rather see helming this movie. My only concern is that the budget's big, and we shall see what the future shall bring. But I'm going to do the best I can on this channel, at least to play a role and making people aware that this is well worth hunting down. Let's see who else is in here talking. Oh, yeah. Diego Vasconcelos or Kellos says, God created Arrakis to train the faithful. I love that line.
It's a great
One of the
line.
most quotable novels in literary history, sci-fi history. You just look up Dune quotes, and each one of them was like, oh, my God, like my whole life just got sent in a new, more positive, interesting direction due to these insightful comments from all the different characters. I can't think of a more quotable sci-fi book in the history of the genre. Someone says, oh, Halo 2, someone actually didn't like the trailer that much. Fighting action scenes look messy. I respectfully disagree, but you never know. You might be right. I mean, there have been plenty of trailers in the past that I've been excited by, that disappointed, but I think that we're going to see something special, or maybe I'm just refusing to allow any negativity to the conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Me too.
Gladiator Shire MVP, or Shiar, X-Men fan. Why do they shake like a hologram when fighting? That is a natural side effect of using the shield. The shield technology, special form of technology where a slow blade can penetrate, a fast blade cannot. And people fight with knives now because if you use a las gun or a laser gun in the context of the story, when it makes contact with the shield, it destroys people on both ends. So what you have is a highly futuristic society where medieval hand-to-hand combat is still alive and well and absolutely vital to the survival of any member of a royal family, because all these royal families are constantly trying to kill each other. And so that's why you're seeing that shimmer due to the shield. And so the trick is to have feints where you'll distract them with some blows and then try to sneak in a slow blow. So it creates an unusual rhythm in the fighting style, which from a choreography standpoint should be very exciting on film.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Explain how this movie has the color palette of a Men's Warehouse. I've never been inside of a Men's Warehouse. I don't know.
You're going to like the way you look, I guarantee it.
Yeah, that was My Tech ID, his comment. Bob O'Mara says, haven't seen Lynch's Dune. Avoid it before watching the new version or check it out?
No, check it out.
I will throw the ball to Bill Scurry. What is your response to that question?
Come on, Bob. Don't do this. Don't make me fly to Ireland personally and Ludovico technique you to watch it. You absolutely should watch it, my friend. You should watch the longest cut you can get your hands on, and you should watch it again. I think it's an incredible movie. I think it's a shitload of fun. Don't believe what people say. It's got this mark of the beast on it. And I mean, I think it's, like Cats. I think it's just become fun to beat the shit out of this thing over the years because it was like Cats before Cats or these things. I think it's a great movie. It's tons of imagination. I mean, it's in some ways very faithful, and in the ways that it's not faithful, it's in its own insua generis property of Lynch. And I've said this to James a million times. This is like the only David Lynch movie I can get down with. And not only is it the only David Lynch movie I can get down with, it's like one of my top 2 or 3 movies. It's like, that's how much I love this. And that's how inscrutable I find the rest of David Lynch's oeuvre. So yes, absolutely. Watch it. Watch
My
it
only
tonight.
knock against the Lynch Dune is that the last like 20 minutes of the movie is basically the second half of the book on fast forward. It just condenses everything. The scenes that it does well, it does really, really well. The atmosphere, the style, the music. I'm right there with you. I saw Lynch's Dune in the theater as a kid. Was totally bewildered. Listened to all the girls scream, and Sting showed up in his silver mankini. I love the film, but sadly, it truncates a lot of the key events during the actual battles toward the end. So it's flawed. Normal says the movie has Thanos, Aquaman, Apocalypse, and an Alaskan bullworm in it. I hope it will be great. I am right there with you. The cast is killer. And Stephen Cardinal along this line says, "Why didn't see Fade Routha? We didn't see Fade Routha, did we? We did not. I don't think to my knowledge, I don't think he's been cast. I don't think we'll see him until they shoot the second one. He's one of the coolest villains in the story, and that's saying something because it is overflowing with amazing villains." But I think they're holding him in reserve to make sure that they really place special emphasis on Duncan and Chani and Liet Kynes and some of these other characters before this true adversary emerges in the latter part of the story. Although if you read the novel, Fade starts popping up pretty early on, being tutored by Baron Vladimir Harkonnen and statesmanship and all those things.
Yeah, you have James was mentioning probably before you tuned in, is that there would seem to be a story benefit from leaving him out of this one, so you could bring him in and sort of a cold open in the second one, which would serve a great narrative purpose of showing like Paul's darker image on the other side.
Any casting that you're aware of from Shout Out Mapes? Because Troy White says, and looking over the IMDb, it does not look as though there will be a part in the movie for Shout Out Mapes, who's one of the key Fremen characters, particularly when it comes to Lady Jessica, her initial integration into Arakeen.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about it so far, and I think all the nerds would have pecked it to death if you had seen it. So I'm going to assume that there is a character, but it's not going to be like one of those cars, brake screech. Oh, look who that actor is. I think it's just going to be part of the story mechanics, and it's probably going to go by very quickly because there's a lot of stuff to fit in, and somebody like the Shout Out Mapes, I think, is going to have to either get elided or extremely compressed because honestly, it's just not that important to the actual narrative itself.
All right, quick question or comment about Mentats versus Navigators. C. Rose says, you just explained Navigators, not Mentats. How would you draw the distinction between the Guild of Navigators versus the Mentats working for the royal houses?
Yeah. I guess I did. I guess I did. There's a lot of commonalities. The Navigators, as Virginia Madsen says, they've been mutated over 4,000 years from exposure to spice. I think that they're just essentially different schools of human computers. The Mentats wind up being these schemer warriors that work in the employ of royal houses, and the Mentats are almost like mariners or sort of commercial pilots or not theologists, but people who work in theory, astrophysics.
Or also just think of them as a consigliere, not on steroids, but on spice. They're a consigliere. It's Robert Duvall in The Godfather, but with the mind of a computer.
Yeah, that's great. You said it better than I could. Absolutely.
All right. So Being JB says, I wish COVID could have happened in 2019 and a vaccine ready by 2020. Yep. I think you speak for all of us. I think, man, no one's going to look back on 2020 and smile unless this movie is really cool. Then maybe it'll wash the whole bad taste of the year out of our mouths. Like, that was the year they gave us Dune. Woo! And it changed the future and trajectory of the sci-fi genre from that point forward. So we shall see. Adam Seba says, got to leave a little bit early today. Bye, everyone. See you later. Adam, thanks as always for swinging by.
Adam.
Funky Sal says, I give Lynch and his Dune a ton of credit for going for it, but it's so 80s at the same time. Yeah, it is 80s. It's a product of its time. It's a product of Dino and Raffaella De Laurentiis, but I love it, and I've seen it more times than I can count. Is it perfect? Hell no, but goddamn, is it fucking good? So yeah, watch it on repeat.
I will add that Dune does the same thing this one does right, which it gets the casting right, and it's eclectic, and it brings in all these people from all these different quadrants of film, American actors, British actors, RADA, international people, and makes a great tapestry out of them. That's one of the reasons why this film is going to be awesome. The first one did that too.
All right, holy moly, that trailer didn't convince me that the set/stage design and costume design will be as aesthetic and creative as the original, but maybe the full movie will differ. I think he's trying to make it feel less operatic, like Flash Gordon might be from that similar period, and a little bit more like it's real. But I think where it'll go big and feel very stylish and heavily stylized, the depiction of the worms, the depiction of the ships in space, just the look of the planet. I don't think it's going to be as otherworldly as Dune in terms of the style and aesthetic, but I think it's going to have its own thing going on. And also, obviously, you don't want to live in the shadow of David Lynch. It's got to go in a different direction. So,
yeah, and keep in mind that this wasn't stated in the trailer, and a lot of people don't know this, but Dune takes place in 10,191. This isn't like the year 3000 or Star Trek distance. This is epochal time, the likes of which have really never been portrayed before. So, I mean, they have a clean slate to do whatever they want, where you could have gone to Flash Gordon, then you could go to Star Wars, and then you can come back to this, which everything looks like a granite library, you know? But that's why you have this freedom to throw it that far in the future. It just changes all the rules.
All right, I'm just looking at some of the remaining comments. Boom, boom, boom. Not sure what version, but I recall seeing them kill a baby worm to get water of life. Only seen it back when I was younger. Have not found a version of it since. Any comment on that?
Yes, that's in the Smithy cut. And actually, there's a couple of different versions of the movie. There's the Smithy cut. There's a few fan cuts. One guy's, if you guys want to see a great cut of the original, it's called Spice Diver's cut. And there may be two versions of it by this point. But Spice Diver did a really good job cutting some scenes out, putting other scenes in, making a different order out of it, even getting deleted scenes that weren't included in Smithy that had popped up on YouTube afterwards. But yeah, everything from Alan Smithy on has the scene where they harvest the water of life, which is the bile, the drowned bile of the newborn baby maker worm.
All right, so Keyline Production says, it's tough for me to reread the books and not picture the costumes from the Lynch version. I share that. And everyone should play the board game at least once. I've never played the board game, but it's one of those things like when I read a comic with Batman, I hear Kevin Conroy's voice. And when I read the book now, even if I try to push his voice out, I hear Patrick Stewart saying Gurney Halek's dialogue. It's impossible not to imagine his delivery. But who knows? Maybe this movie will be so powerful that it'll push all those interpretations right out of my mind, creating new space where I'll only hear Josh Brolin's voice. Because this is a book that I will continue to reread until the end of my time on this planet. Moose says, when I watch it, are there any specific spices I should be sniffing? Dealer's choice, my friend. Dealer's choice. Mike Tan says, if this was released in this year, they need to wait till next year so COVID won't take out their movie sale, leading to the second movie not being made. It is the big $1 million question. To what degree will the current landscape affect the impact of this film? I'm sure Warner Brothers has meetings daily, strategizing. They need their own staff of mentats to figure out the clearest path forward for this movie to increase its chances of success. But in a year of such massive transition, I think they will have, with Wonder Woman 1984, Warner Brothers will have all the evidence they need moving forward to make the best possible decision. But who knows? Maybe Tenet has already made them gun shy, because Tenet, while I really enjoyed it, it's just without California, without New York, domestic box office will always be soft. Those are the two biggest movie-going capitals in the country. I had to travel up to Connecticut to see that. But I guarantee you Warner Brothers has the smartest minds they can afford trying to figure out the proper distribution plan.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Warner's not release it, or am I thinking of a different studio?
That was, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they did it, chapter 1 and 2.
Right. So the thing is that I know that they were emulating their own model with that. And the thing is, they got it chapter 1 really right, and that they gave Andreas Muschietti a lot of slack and a lot of leeway to come in and make, I don't know if it was his first English language movie, but it was his first tentpole movie. And the results were just absolutely beyond their expectation. You know, he really delivered on something, made a shitload of money.
Yeah, like 700 million or something insane.
Really good job. And they thought, okay, so what we can do is make this thing into two-parter. You know, we know that there's hunger. We had a blockbuster on our hands with the first one, so let's keep that heat going. That's where Warner's fucked it up, is that they really dropped a compromised version of the second part. Maybe they left too much of the book to adapt to put in one movie, or Muschietti just dropped the ball. I couldn't tell you. But it looks like, if anything, you might get more Dune in here, giving the back end a little chance to breathe. So, I mean, I can only hope that this makes as much money or close to as much money as it did, because Warner's has already sort of pioneered this model, which is why they're trying to do it again.
Gotcha. Well, I realize I haven't really gone back to the trailer in a while, and we're getting close to the hour mark, but there's still so many people in here. I'm going to keep going, Bill. If you, are you down to talk for a little bit longer? Beautiful. All right. Well, back to the trailer. This vision of this giant army with a gray backdrop. Are we seeing the Harkonnen army, or is that the Sardakar army? For me, I'm thinking it's the Harkonnens, because it immediately cuts to the Beast as well as the Baron right after that image.
That's a good question. I would almost be inclined to think it's Seleucus Secundus, because it's a harsh, planet with, like acid rain, and those are definitely Sardakar. I mean, I think that those are Sardakar and Harkonnen livery. Sorry to get nerdy and technical about this. And yes, they do go to Raban is going to be the captain of the guards at that point, who's leading the attack on Arakeen. But it's either them taking off from Gidi Prime, the homeworld of the Harkonnens, or it's Seleucus Secundus, which is the prison planet of House Carino. Again, I'm going way nerdy on this one, but this looks like we have two options.
Hey, when you're talking about Dune, you got no other option. Now, we haven't mentioned yet the person for whom 1,000 deaths will not be sufficient. What are your thoughts on Dr. Wellington Yueh?
Well, Yueh is such an important character in this, for what he does that's horrible to Paul Atreides, and how he's the one that really unlocks this miserable future for everybody. And that, Paul Atreides does not want to charge through to the jihad. And if he was left at home in Caladan, none of it would happen. But this is the fate that, hand is dealt, the hand that fate has dealt him. So the actor, I'm not familiar with him. I mean, he starred in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. He's mostly has a lot of Cantonese and Mandarin movies that he's done. This might be his first English language movie. Correct my ignorance. But it's like that was one of those outside of the box castings that they were trying to do. People were wondering. He was one of the last actors announced. His name is Chen, I think. Chang?
Chen Chang, yes. Yep.
Chen Chang, yeah. He's both of those things I just said. Yeah, so it's fascinating. It's like I think in the Thor movie when they brought in Tadanobu Asano to play what the hell? Which are the Warriors 3 did he play? I can't remember. But it was like, oh yeah, excellent.
Hogan?
Hogan the Grim, yeah, right. Like, let's bring in these people. Let's go outside the box, and especially with how booming China is, it's it gives the Chinese cultural thing a little foothold in the movie. It'll allow it to have a big release over in the mainland if they're doing that kind of thing too. But yeah, we don't know anything about him, but I assume that he will be, as the whole reserve of his character is that he's supposed to be withheld because he's compromised and he's holding this secret back. And that's more or less his. If I was directing him, that's what I would tell him. You're holding a secret back. You're compromised.
I think he's one of the most tragic figures in it. Yeah. I understand Lady Jessica's feelings toward him, but Yueh is one of the most emotional stories in the entire narrative in terms of what drives him, what motivates him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he compares to Dean Stockwell. Now, let's just talk favorite shots from the trailer, because for me, there's one that really stands out, and it's Gurney Halek holding Paul's hand on a landing pad, looking down as a spice harvester is swallowed by a worm. And when I saw that, I about took a shit in my pants. So, but how did that moment strike you?
That was it. Yeah, I was getting fucked up before that. That was the beginning. I mean, the scene between Mohayim and Paul was one thing, but it's like when you got to the ring of sand exploding and the spice harvester getting swallowed up. Yeah, I was goose flesh for the rest of the whole damn thing. That's such a big deal shot, and it looks so good. I mean, everything that they did in the first movie had to be done practically. Those were all special effects done on sets, and they were all 1/60th miniatures, but they were still pretty hardcore.
David Lynch himself making a cameo on the Harvester.
That's true. Is the Harvester pilot, but it's like this one. This is all CG, and there's something CG can't nail. But it's like they got sand right. I mean, none of that stuff's going to be real and practical. But that shaking of the desert—that's what it's supposed to look like, and that's why it's like the scale of these things. Them running away from the worm, and they had to. I don't know how many different ways there are to render the worm to design it, because I mean, it's described very cleanly and clearly in the book. It's this massive thing, thousands of meters long, with this huge maw filled with razor razor sharp teeth. And it's like, well, there's only a couple of different interpretations. The Dune version in '84 had a flapped mouth that opened up. But this is like a living tornado that comes out of the fucking sand. But that scene was like nuts, because we caught that angle in the '84 version, but it looks so much more sedate and controlled because they were just using motion control cameras. But this was like all hell opens up from the sand.
Now I'm looking at an image of the Beast with a couple of soldiers walking behind him, and they all have that same, basically they all look like I do, super pale, totally bald. Do you think that's basically all the Harkonnen forces are going to have a similar aesthetic, almost like the War Boys in Mad Max Fury Road?
I think they have to. Part of the deal is that each family, in addition to having their own livery, their own costumes, you need to be able to tell them apart. It's one of the prime reasons why Michael Bay's movies, the Transformers, were terrible, because you couldn't tell the bad guys from the good guys. But this one, it's like there are three different factions here. You have House Harkonnen, their soldiers. You got House Atreides, their soldiers. You got the Sardakar, and the Sardakar presumably are going to be dressed as House Harkonnen, so to be clearly defined. And I think that the motif of everyone having the bald heads, because you remember in the '84 movie, that was true to the book. They were all redheads. That's how you knew there was a Harkonnen, because they all had red hair. I mean, genetically.
Yeah, and the David Lynch Beast has got he's a total carrot top.
Yeah, right. And
interesting.
So,
Oh, go. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just that they had hair. They were emulating Baron Harkonnen. They all had. They were following it, like the Spanish lisp of the royals.
Like they're all inbred. All right, so interesting conversation here going on about the weirding modules, which were absolutely a part of David Lynch's movie, not a part of the book. The book, they have the weirding way, and the weirding way is essentially martial arts. It's like Jessica's really good at it, Paul's really good at it, and they share their way of battle with the Fremen. But the reason you're not seeing those machines where they go, oh, shut, because David Lynch cooked those things up. And they're kind of cool in a cinematic way. He basically had an aversion to the idea of people having kung fu fights on the sand dunes. I think that would have been really cool, but don't expect to see the weirding modules this time around.
Yeah, the Fremen themselves are super weapons, even on their own, and who knows what kind of fighting style they're going to be choreographed to do. But I would assume that Jessica, they're going to Rebecca Ferguson is going to do her own fucking up there, and so she's going to have her own style. And I think her and Timothée Chalamet are probably going to duplicate each other's style. And then on top of that, yes, the Fremen will have their own style that'll probably look a lot more rough, or like boxing, or just beating the shit out of people.
It's going to be a bunch of gnarly knife fights. It's thousands of people in the desert with knives stabbing each other to death. It's going to be so gnarly, so savage. And I like the idea of it getting up close and personal. So yeah, bring on the weirding way. I want to see the weirding way as Frank Herbert initially depicted it.
But I love the weirding modules. I think that is one of those, much like the heart plugs. It's just these things that David Lynch, he's a maniac. Any other movie, these things, that sensibility, that sense of weirdness throws me off. I can't catch Lynch. I can't follow him. But in Dune, it makes perfect sense. It's like, why would they not have heart plugs? Why would they not have these weird sonic boxes that could blow up a marble obelisk? Put them in there.
All right. Well, we've been going an hour and 7. Any final thoughts? We got 195 people. Now 202. That's actually the most people that have been in the live stream at any one time. Yeah. Any final thoughts on favorite moments, shots, reveals in the trailer? I think I've gone through all my personal favorites, but maybe second favorite to the shot of the crawler being swallowed are just some of the shots of Paul in combat. We see Stilgar, hood over the eyes tinged with blue. Something tells me these bits that we're seeing are when Stilgar's tribe first meets Paul and the Lady Jessica, or these might be scenes from where Paul gets really put to the test, as we all know from the novel.
Yeah, I love picking up. There's a couple of shots when you see Paul gunning the throttle on an ornithopter to get above the sandstorm. And that's right out of the book. That's their escape. The first time they escape, or the second time they escape, is they're on their way to Siege Jabar. At the end, when they're headed towards the rock, and that looks like it comes right out of the book. They put a thumper down to distract the worm. The worm comes to them. They're running across the sand to the protection of a rock face. And the worm comes out and looks at them before it turns around and goes to another thumper. That was incredible. That's going to be awesome.
It's epic filmmaking. Yeah. Okay, so interesting comment from Lix01. It wasn't just martial arts. It was Bene Gesserit training to be hyper observant. So for people out there who are unfamiliar with the books and maybe only vaguely familiar with the movies, explain what the Bene Gesserit training is and what their goal is long term over multiple generations. Because I think a lot of people trip up over what the Bene Gesserit's purpose in the universe might be.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question. I'm glad you mentioned it because it is super important. We're talking about the Mentats a lot because that's like they're so screen ready and you kind of see them up front and they're dudes. The Bene Gesserit is a female order, exclusively female order, that like the photo inverse of the Mentats, whereas the Mentats are human computers that don't really focus so much. They are a different, they're a different system altogether. It's warfare and it's strategy and realpolitik. The Bene Gesserit focus on the control of the body. They look inwards rather than outwards. And so everything the Mentats can do looking outward into the world and modeling and problem solving and all this sort of infinitesimal algorithmic ways of viewing the world, the Bene Gesserit do it on the inside. So they can control every single thing about their body. They have control over their nerves, their thoughts, their feelings, their muscles, their digestion, the molecules in their body.
Their voice, particularly their voice.
Yeah, so it borders on mystical. I mean, a lot of these things in this book do border on mystical, but I think the most kind of potentially bunkum or hokum thing that you think of is that what they can do in terms of they carry ancestor memory, collective genetic memory that they can access. So they have access to legacy from ancestors and things like that. But yes, they could like transmute poisons with their body. By touching poison to their lips, they could deactivate a whole chain of poisons. Such is the control on a molecular level, enzymatically, of what they get to do. But yes, they can almost like be encased in sand and sleep for a year, having their heart beat once every month and still maintain life. Just like the ultimate ninjas is kind of what they are in so many ways.
And how would you characterize their plotting and scheming when it comes to bloodlines?
Yeah, well, that's the secret, is that they do these things and they have their own ends that the rest of the universe isn't aware of. Now, they are insinuated into all royal houses because they almost form a quasi-religious order. So they're almost running around like abbesses or nuns or something like that. But the Imperium thinks that they are fully integrated into the order of running a galaxy, all the great houses. But the reality is they're serving their own ends because they are insinuated into these houses and they are engaging in a collective breeding program over the course of generations, eons, where they are focusing on little traits and bits and pieces, trying to develop a creature they call the Kwisatz Haderach, the super being. And that the word Kwisatz Haderach, as Frank Herbert invented, is called the shortening of the way.
How can this be?
I don't quite know what it means. But yes, so Paul Atreides, Fade, Baron Harkonnen, Rebecca Ferguson's character, Lady Jessica, they are all part of this large breeding program, which, I mean, I can't wait to see how that manifests itself because it is very textual. It's going to have a lot to do with this story. I mean, Paul Atreides is the summation of this breeding program.
Or potentially. We don't want to give anything away, but he is potentially the summation because there have been other people prior to him who also had that potential as well. And sometimes somebody just falls just a little bit short, like as in the case of Fenring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Which we were talking about this. Like I would probably dollars to donuts. Fenring probably is not going to show up. I'll be surprised if he does. I'll be thrilled if Lady and Lord Fenring show up in this because that's going to be a lot of plot to bite off to have to explain who these people are. But it could happen.
Absolutely. Well, the good news is the book's always here. All the information's here. It's been beloved and adored for 55 years at this point. I can't think of a book in any genre or any period that I would say surpasses it. Some would say, Lord of the Rings. Some would say the Bible. Some would say, Brothers Karamazov. Pick your poison. I think when it comes to combining genre with literary fiction at the highest level, Dune is the heavyweight champion. It is the GOAT. And I just, once again, I'm getting tongue-tied trying to express my anticipation and excitement and enthusiasm without getting too carried away, too hyperbolic, because we have seen good trailers in the past that lead to shite films. I don't think it's going to happen here. I think at the worst case scenario is we're going to see a brilliant movie that flops because people just don't get into the spirit of things, and that'll just be the movie. And we'll never, in our minds and through the book, we'll know what comes next. So worst case scenario, if we just get a great movie that doesn't get to continue, I can live with that. But obviously I'm hoping that it sweeps the Oscars, makes all the money, and that 2, 3, 4 years from now, we get a sequel that's the most anticipated sci-fi movie in movie history. That's my dream scenario.
I don't think the quality is in question here. I don't think that I mean, we could ponder if the execution will be okay. I mean, Denis Villeneuve, if you haven't seen his movies, and I haven't seen all of them, but everything I've seen.
Sorry, quick interruption. Troy White's pointing out that I have the Silmarillion right over my shoulder.
Yeah.
I love the Silmarillion. Silmarillion, kind of unadaptable. I'm hoping the Lord of the Rings show will capture some of it, but they're doing total Second Age, and Second Age is much more modest in scale than the First Age. If anybody ever wants to make a movie out of the First Age from the Silmarillion, whoa, yeah, you better, hold on to your butts. It'll be something special. But Silmarillion's up there with Dune, right there alongside it. I've read the Silmarillion a couple times, and it's fabulous. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just saying that I don't think the quality is going to be in doubt because, I mean, the bit of his work that I've seen, I think I've seen 4 of his features. They're incredible. I mean, he's got a style and a sensibility. He didn't come out of that. He's not that, was it Baltazar Kormákur or one of those mid-level action dudes who comes out of Iceland and does Contraband or whatever. I'm sure their movies are fine. There's a couple of tiers of director out there who they give these movies to. He's like a bona fide art house guy who came out of a different school. I mean, Incendies and Prisoners and Enemy and Arrival. I mean, he's zipped into all over the place. I mean, he's made these incredible movies. Sicario was nuts. It's loopy what this guy can do. I love
Sicario. I thought Sicario was incredible.
His range is crazy. And I mean, I was in the beginning when they announced this, I think in 17 or 18, they gave it to him. I was almost like, for his own sake, I would have said, I kind of want to see you make your own thing. I mean, because you've just been on a rip of just incredibly inventive, non-IP based movies, and we don't know where you're going to go from here. But now that's in front of us, it's like, yeah, all right, if anybody's going to do it, give it to him. And he feels proprietary about it, which is really good hands to have. It
reminds me of the comment he made at Comic-Con a couple of years before, I guess it was the summer before Blade Runner 2049 came out, but somebody asked him a question, how come you're doing this sequel to a beloved classic? And he said, I didn't want to see somebody else fuck it up. And I think that's probably his attitude towards Dune, because if you give it to pretty much anyone else, there's a much higher likelihood that they'll drop the ball. So once again, I can't think of another director on the planet that I would rather see in the director's chair on this movie.
I mean, the choice was like Peter Berg's Dune. No. Seriously, I
like him in The Last Seduction just fine. I don't need to see him directing Dune.
No. But that's how these guys think. It's just like, well, it's a safe studio guy. Let's give it to him, and he's going to turn in a complete bag of shit. And I'm glad that did not happen.
Yeah. No, all the stars are aligned. Now it's on the audience to show up. It's on the audience to realize this is not a simple fantasy fable. This is the great sci-fi saga being taken seriously by the best cast you could possibly assemble, by the best craftsmen and technicians you could possibly assemble.
Yeah.
The trailer gave me goosebumps many times over. I've seen it 5 or 6 times now. It's incredibly special. I think we should consider ourselves lucky that the movie industry is even capable of giving us a movie on this scale, or at least what has been teased so far.
This is like David Lean getting the chance to do a genre science fiction movie.
Exactly.
The only comparison I have is like watching Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, the thing is, Lawrence of Arabia was only shot like 1,000 miles away from this place, or I mean, if that. But yeah, the scale and the sort of consistency and the style, the palette that this guy has, and his sensibility as a director, I think is exactly. You wish that other people would get to do stuff. I mean, you want the Russos to do movies like they do, and that's great. You want all these different recipes, but it's like you want people to come in high and low. Like if Claire Denis said she wanted to do the next Dune, I would say, yeah, that's exactly who I would like to be fucking around for. A one movie diversion from what she usually does. It's like
we'll let Claire Denis do Children of Dune if she's still alive. She's getting up there in age, but. All right. Well, we've been going an hour 20, and I kind of have to go TT. Any final thoughts on this film as it's coming? That's coming our way. In theory, in 3 months' time, most likely, probably early 2021, if it gets delayed as we suspect. But you're like me. You love the movies. You love the books. You love it all. Closing remarks.
Well, I was really alloyed today by the experience of seeing how excited everyone else got for it too. And I thought that this could just be something me and a couple of bald nerds in New York are interested in, but it's like I've seen that there is a real groundswell of people who are into this for any number of reasons. So the fact that there was such heat of people showing up and hitting refresh on Twitter, trying to get that trailer was really
people saying, "Where the fuck is the Dune trailer?
What the fuck are you doing?" Yeah. But it was a great moment to be. It could be, we could all enjoy something good at the same time, and that's really alloying.
Yeah, it's a special moment where everybody just gets on board and gets excited, and it's like going to see the Beatles in 1964. It's just like when suddenly everybody's just having this big giant love fest. And obviously we've seen in our comments, a few people didn't like the trailer. Our friend Tristan Lofting had a variety of strange complaints early on that I did not agree with, but you know, we live in a great big wide world, and I'm down with any and all opinions. That they're opinions. Opinions are opinions. They're neither right nor wrong. They're just opinions. But it is cool to be on the bandwagon with all these fellow freaks and geeks and fans that are so excited. Sir. I can't think of a movie in terms of genre that I've been this excited for since my anticipation for Return of the King prior to its release in 2003. I'm placing it up on that level right now in terms of just my overall audience expectation.
Yeah, I'm kind of buzzed the same as for Infinity War. Just wondering, how are they going to pull this off? What the fuck is this going to be? How are they going to do it? And it's like, it turns out, yes, it's good. You nailed it. You got it.
Well, where can people find you in the short term if they want to talk more about Dune? And what would you recommend in terms of reading and watching as like some homework, just to kind of, you know, enrich people's palates in anticipation of this film?
You can find me on Twitter at William Scurry. I do a podcast also at Noah and Bill Show. I do a podcast called I Don't Get It. So I'm on both of those things all the goddamn time. And your homework is watch the Lynch movie, pick up Dune, and at least read the first book, Dune. It's 3 books, Dune, Muad'Dib, and Prophecy. Give Dune a shot. Sometimes it gets hard to get through. A friend of ours, Steve Flack, has been trying to get through it, and he's doing it, but it could be a little bit of a hard read. But it's like, go for the OG. Read the book, watch the movie, and get ready for this, and then be enthusiastic with us.
Absolutely. Well, we hope y'all enjoyed today's live stream. This, at the peak, this is my most watched live stream in terms of people being on board. So it's been a roaring success as far as I'm concerned. So I'm thrilled to see so many fellow fans. And hell, if people like this kind of content, Bill and I will get together, you know, once a month and keep this conversation going right up to the release, because it's an inexhaustible subject for me. I will probably reread the book for a 4th time between now and then. And if you're struggling with the book and the jargon, there are some sci-fi and fantasy books where quite literally you just have to have a glossary of terms beside you, but you'll start to notice something after 20, 30, 40 pages. You're consulting the glossary less frequently, and suddenly you're just in that world, and you're living and breathing it, and all the terminology is familiar, and it's no longer an obstacle. It's just detail and depth and texture that you can sink your teeth into. It is a monumental work that gets my highest possible recommendation. And of all the books on this shelf, yeah, that might be the first one that I would recommend. But we hope y'all have enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for all the incredible comments and questions and support. That's been fantastic. Oh, Dune Enthusiasm from Colombia. Hell yeah, Barrel Raider, great to see you. You've been with us since before the live stream even started. You were in the chat. Yeah. That's fantastic. So we'll see y'all around the Twitterverse. But remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. But thanks again as always. But more importantly, onwards and upwards. All right, ending the broadcast.